Buckeye fans, are you celebrating? You need to celebrate. I know this game against Texas is coming up, and Quinn Ewers, who used to be in an Ohio State uniform, and that's a story that we'll talk about as the days go on up until this next game. We're going to talk about Quinn Ewers. He had to leave. C.J. Stroud had things totally under control here at Ohio State. So Quinn Ewers went to Texas, and now he'll be playing against our Ohio State Buckeyes, and we're going to get you, Quinn. But let's talk about Ryan Day. He finally let the dogs out. That's all you had to do, Ryan. You let the dogs. You had dogs on the offensive and defensive line. You got dogs. And yeah, you had some injuries. But you got second and third tier guys who will be probably going to the NFL. And so you let those dogs loose. Jeremiah Smith, now you decided to say, look, I am not going to have another game where Jeremiah Smith doesn't get at least 11 touches. Not going to do it. I'm not going to have another game where that offensive line is not blowing people off the line. You let the dogs loose, and those dogs were hungry. Of course, being beat by Michigan. Some of these seniors have never beaten Michigan. So their time for redemption is right now. And all Ryan Day had to do was let the dogs out, and he did. Jeremiah Smith was outstanding. Emeka Ibuka, outstanding. I thought they had to go to the tight end a little bit. They did that to start the game, outstanding. Zeke's got a very, very fine tight end. You should be able to hit him at least 3-4 times a game. And what they've done to get Henderson out of the backfield to be a receiver, that was smart. There's no linebacker that's going to stay with him. So I think they should keep that trend. But again, this Ohio State team and what Ryan Day did, they are to be saluted. And to beat Oregon like they did was amazing. And of course, many of you remember the first game. Look, they only beat us by 1 point. We fumbled the ball twice, and we gave up 70 yards in penalties. So that's a big reason why you lost that game. But this is a big win. And this game coming up against Texas is a big one because we can beat them. Texas is not Oregon. They're formidable, but Arizona State at least it took them to overtime. And I don't think Arizona State's a good team, but they're not Ohio State good. So if you could barely beat Arizona State, and no disrespect to them, but if you could barely beat Arizona State, how are you going to play my Ohio State Buckeyes? How are you going to do that? And I got Will Howard, bless you. I had my doubts about you, especially the way Kyle McCord is playing at Syracuse, the leading passer in the nation. We let that go, and I was wondering, after this Michigan loss, did we make a big mistake? A lot of you out there were wondering, did we make a big mistake? But Will Howard, the last 2 games, he has been magnificent. And I just the way the coaches have nurtured him and protected his ego and what he has done in these last 2 games, this guy's an NFL prospect for sure. And if he continues to do what he has been doing the last 2 games, there's no doubt about him being one of the top 5 quarterbacks coming out of college football. In my impression, one of the top 5. He's 6'5", over 200 some odd pounds, and he throws pinpoint passes. Yes, he's going to the NFL. I think one of the top 5 quarterbacks in college football today. Let's look at Jeremiah Smith. You can't stop him with one guy. You got to double team him the entire game if you're going to stop him. And if you do that, we've got Ibuka who can stand tall. You look at some of the things that we have here at Ohio State. You can't just stop one person. But when we get that running game going, and I like what you did at Ohio State, Ryan Day and the offensive minds at Ohio State, when you started out passing the football because you knew that they couldn't stop your passing game. So you got the passing game going, and then you got the running game going. A marvelous decision. You know that they couldn't stop you passing that football. You know that they couldn't stop. Emeka Ibuka is a tremendous talent, but he is not the best talent as far as wide receiver on this team. Emeka Ibuka is an All-American, but he is not the best wide receiver on this team. Jeremiah Smith is an animal, is amazing. And what he can do on the football field, one man can't stop him. Now, if you try to guard him with one man, Texas, you are going to be toast. I predicted Ohio State would win 27-16 against this Oregon team. I think they'll beat Texas 31-16. Texas cannot beat us. No way. If you can barely beat Arizona State, you can't beat my Ohio State Buckeyes. No way. So Ryan Day is to be given all the credit in the world, and his coaching staff as well, because you let the dogs out. I like that song. Who let the dogs out? Well, you let the dogs out. And when you let the dogs come out and play, you get this kind of performance from the Ohio State Buckeyes. They are championship ready. Now, I'm not saying they'll definitely win the championship, because you got to go out there and prove it on the field. But there's no team more talented than the Buckeyes. And when they let the Buckeyes go out there and play, look, the defense was playing not to lose on a lot of games. Against Michigan, they played not to lose. Against a quarterback that can play like this, Dylan Gabriel has a talent to play, you got to put pressure on him. You got to pressure him and make life difficult for him. You got to make him feel you, as we used to say on the football field. He's got to feel you. And he's got to know that he's getting pressure every time he goes back there for a pass. If you don't do that, you leave your cornerbacks and safeties in a position that they don't need to be in. You need to put pressure on that quarterback, and that's what the Ohio State Buckeyes did. They dialed up pressure, they let the dogs loose, and they were like animals against that talented Oregon offense. The offensive line must be given credit, because they were gaping holes, and the Ohio State running backs, Judkins and Henderson, went wild. So I'm happy, totally happy. 65% of that bad taste in my mouth with that Michigan loss is gone. And these Buckeyes look championship ready as well. What I believe, Ryan Day, many of you were casting Ryan Day aside, fire Ryan Day. No, you don't do that. No. Look, Ryan Day is college football is tougher to win right now. When players can go different places, look at Indiana, what they did in just 1 year with transfers. So it's harder to win right now than ever before in college football. And now that you've added Oregon, USC, and some of the talent from the Pac-10 in the Big Ten now, it's even harder to win. I mean, USC, Oregon, Washington, they're all in there now. To add to Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, now Indiana. So I believe it's harder to win in today's football than ever before. Ryan Day has done a spectacular job, and the way you beat Michigan. Now you know the way to beat Michigan. When it comes to next season, you let the freaking dogs out. You let those guys go out there and manhandle the offensive line from whoever you're playing. That defensive line on Ohio State is murder. And I like the way they came out with an aggressive mindset. We're going to hit everything moving. We're going to attack the quarterback. We're going to make life difficult for any offense we play. And when you play like that, Ohio State is the best team in college football. When you play not to lose, you end up like a game against Michigan. When you play like I'm going to dominate you, you end up like a game against Oregon. That's all I got to say. When you let's do this. Before I leave, I want to talk about Ohio State has had some great wide receivers. I mean, look at some of the best ones they've had. Chris Carter, David Boston, Michael Jenkins, Terry Glenn, Joey Galloway, Marvin Harrison Jr., Paul Warfield, one of my favorite players of all time. In fact, when I was playing football, I used to wear his number. I mean, where do you rank Jeremiah Smith with these greats? I want you to tag me on this one. Let me know what you think. Who is the best wide receiver in the history of Ohio State? If I didn't mention one that's on my list, put him in there. Who do you think it is? Jeremiah Smith ranks at the top, but Chris Carter was a bad boy. David Boston was bad. Michael Jenkins, now in the NFL, was bad. Terry Glenn, you know what he could do. Joey Galloway, Marvin Harrison, Paul Warfield. Where do you rank Jeremiah Smith? We'll talk about that in my next cast. But Ohio State, Texas coming up. We're going to look at that game, review that game, and my score is 31-16. I think the Buckeyes win this one big. There's no way I can think of that Quinn Ewers who could barely get by Arizona State, did not look good in that win. Yes, he did throw a touchdown pass in overtime to win the game. Arizona, I don't know how they let that go. They should not have even won the game. Actually, the targeting penalty that they did not call against Texas was the reason they did win that game. Not taking away from anything from Texas, but that was a sure targeting call that got missed. We'll see you next time featuring Street Talk with the Ohio State Buckeyes. See you.